A first sign of trouble came from the Outer Rim. Ambassador Kethvin of the Vethkar Collective was reviewing trade reports when the message arrived. His crystalline body flickered with confusion as he read the words on his screen. Unknown. Vessels detected. Size classification. Impossible. Kethvin had seen many ships in his 300 years of life. Cargo haulers the size of cities. Warships that could crack moons. But the readings from the Rim Scouts made no sense. These new ships were bigger than anything the galaxy had ever built. Show me the data, he commanded, a hologram that appeared. In his chamber made him step backward. The ship on the screen was not just large. It was enormous beyond understanding. The scanner showed a vessel that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Its hull gleamed like polished metal, and strange. Lights pulsed along its surface. How many crew does a ship like this carry? Kethvin asked. Unknown, sir. Our computers cannot calculate it. The ship is simply too big. But size was not the most frightening thing about these newcomers. 3 days later, the Kolosari sent their message to the galaxy. It was simple and direct. We are the Kolosari. Hegemony. You will surrender. You will serve. Resistance is death. The message came from beings that stood 15 feet tall. Their skin was gray like stone, and their eyes glowed with inner fire. When they spoke, their voices shook the ground. They called themselves the masters of 1,000 worlds beyond the rim. The Vethkar Collective tried to negotiate first. They sent their best diplomats to meet with the Kolosari fleet. The meeting lasted exactly 10 minutes. Your offer is rejected, the Kolosari commander said. His name was Overlord Vaskther, and he towered over the crystal beings like a mountain over pebbles. You have 1 hour to surrender your fleets. After that, we will take them. But surely we can reach some agreement, Ambassador Kethvin pleaded. We are a peaceful people. We have knowledge to share, resources to trade. Vaskther looked down at the small crystal being with something that might have been amusement. You misunderstand. We do not trade. We do not negotiate. We take what we need. And if we refuse, then you will learn why 1,000 civilizations already kneel before us. Double quotes, the Vethkar tried to refuse. Their crystal ships were fast, and their weapons were precise. They had defended their space for over a millennium. But against the Kolosari, their technology seemed like toys. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Vethkar Collective no longer existed as a military power. Their ships drifted in space, cut apart by weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. The few survivors sent one final message across the galaxy. Run, hide, do not fight them. The Synthesium thought they would fare better. Their biomechanical ships could adapt and evolve during battle. Their living vessels had survived wars that destroyed entire star systems. Surely they could stand against these giants. They were. Wrong. The Kolosari did not just defeat the Synthesium. They absorbed their technology. Within days of the first battle, Kolosari ships began showing biomechanical features. They had somehow learned to copy and improve upon Synthesian designs in real time. How is this possible? Demanded Prime Node Zarathik as she watched her fleets being systematically destroyed. Our ships are learning from their attacks, but theirs are learning faster. Her science officer, a hybrid of machine and flesh, buzzed with electronic distress. They are not just copying our technology, Prime Node. They are perfecting it. Every adaptation we make, they counter within minutes. The Photonic Confederacy lasted longest, but only because they tried to run. Their ships moved at near light speed, flitting between dimensions like ghosts. For 2 weeks, they played it deadly. Game of hide and seek with the Kolosari fleet's dot, it ended when the giants demonstrated their most terrifying ability. They did not chase the photonic ships. They simply reached out across space and turned off their engines. Impossible. whispered Admiral Luxandra as her flagship died around her. "Our quantum drives cannot be affected by external forces. The laws of physics prevent it." But the Kolosari cared nothing for the laws of physics as other races understood them. Their technology operated on principles that made the impossible seem routine. Ships stopped in mid-flight. Weapons turned against their own users. Reality itself seemed to bend to their will. Within 3 months, the 3 greatest powers in the galaxy were gone. Not destroyed completely, but broken so thoroughly that they could never rise again. The survivors were allowed to live, but only as servants of the new masters. The smaller races surrendered without fighting. The insectoid hive clusters handed over their queens. The aquatic depth swimmers opened their ocean worlds to Kolosari occupation. The machine minds of the Iron Collective simply shut themselves down and waited for new orders. But there was one species that did something unexpected. The humans simply vanished. They had been a small presence in the galaxy, barely worth noticing. Their ships were primitive by galactic standards. Their weapons were crude. Their diplomats were often ignored in the great councils of the major powers. They controlled perhaps a dozen star systems at the edge of civilized space. When the Kolosari came for them, they found empty worlds. Where are they? Overlord Vaskther demanded as his forces swept through human space. Our intelligence showed colonies on 12 worlds, orbital stations around 6 stars. Where did they go? His subordinates had no answers. The human colonies were abandoned, but not destroyed. The orbital stations hung empty in space, their lights still blinking, but no life signs aboard. It was as if an entire species had simply decided to disappear. Perhaps they fled beyond the rim, suggested Sub-Commander Nethkal. Small species often run when faced with superior force. No, Vaskther growled. We have sensors that can track a fleeing ship across the galaxy. If they had run, we would have found them. This is something else. But the Kolosari had bigger concerns than one missing species. They had a galaxy to organize, tribute to collect, and resistance movements to crush. The humans, wherever they were, would turn up eventually. All species did, in the end. The galaxy settled into its new order. The Kolosari built massive stations at strategic points throughout space. Their fleets patrolled trade routes that now existed only to serve their masters. Tribute flowed from 1,000 worlds to the giants who ruled them all. Peace, of a sort, came to the galaxy. The peace of the conquered. The peace of those who had learned that resistance was futile. But in the dark spaces between the stars, something small moved unseen. Something that had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes survival meant becoming invisible. Sometimes the only way to fight giants was to make sure they never saw you coming. Captain Elena Vasquez stared at the dead asteroid floating in space ahead of them. From the outside, it looked like any other piece of space rock. Dark, cold, and worthless. But hidden inside its hollow core was the UE Defiance, and with it, the last free humans in the galaxy. How long have we been running now? Asked Commander Sarachun as she joined Elena on the bridge. 6 months, 2 weeks, 4 days, Elena replied without looking away from the view screen. Not that anyone's counting. The Defiance had not always been a warship. Originally, she was a mining vessel built to crack asteroids and harvest their metals. Her hull was thick and scarred from years of hard work. Her engines were reliable, but slow. She was the kind of ship that no one noticed, which had turned out to be exactly what humanity needed. When the Kolosari came, most of the human fleet tried to fight. The battleships and carriers had charged forward, with flags flying and weapons blazing. They lasted about as long as soap bubbles in a hurricane. But the Defiance had been on the far edge of human space, mining ice from a comet. By the time Elena got word of the invasion, the war was already over. Captain, called Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "I'm picking up another transmission. Colasari patrol frequency." Elena sighed. "Let's hear it." The alien voice that filled the bridge was deep and commanding. Elena's universal translator turned the words into English, but the tone of absolute authority needed no translation. "This is Patrol Leader Gorthmek to all vessels in Sector 47. Report any signs of human activity immediately. The missing species must be found. Overlord Vaskther grows impatient with our failure." Elena muted the transmission and looked around. At her crew, 847 souls crowded into a ship meant for maybe 200. They slept in shifts. They rationed everything from food to breathing air, but they were alive and they were free. "They're getting closer," observed Dr. Marcus Chun, Sarah's younger brother and the ship's chief engineer. "That's the third patrol. This week, let them look," Elena said. "We're ghosts in their machine now." It had taken them months to perfect their hiding technique. The Defiance would approach a dead asteroid, use her mining lasers to hollow out a space just big enough for the ship, and then seal herself inside. To any scanning device, they looked like nothing more than another piece of space junk dot, but hiding was only part of their strategy. Elena had spent the last 6 months turning her mining ship into something the galaxy had never seen before. A spy vessel. "Marcus, show me what we learned from that Colasari data core we picked up last month." The young engineer's eyes lit up. Marcus Chun was barely 25, but he had a gift for understanding alien technology that amazed even Elena. He could look at a piece of equipment from any species and somehow figure out how it worked. "The data core was a treasure," Marcus said, pulling up holographic displays around the bridge. "I've been analyzing their communication protocols for weeks. Captain, these giants have made themselves completely dependent on their network." Elena studied the swirling patterns of data. "Explain it like I'm 5 years old, Marcus." "Okay, imagine you have an army where every soldier has to ask permission before they can tie their shoes. That's the Colasari. Every decision, no matter how small, goes up the chain of command, and every order comes back down through their quantum communication network." "That sounds incredibly inefficient," Sarah observed. "It is," Marcus agreed, "but it also gives them perfect coordination. When an overlord gives an order, every ship in the fleet gets it at the exact same instant. No delays, no confusion, no mistakes. It's what makes them so dangerous." Elena began to see where this was going. "And what happens if that network gets disrupted?" "That's what I've been working on. Captain, I think I know how to hurt them." Marcus manipulated the holographic display, showing the structure of the Colasari. Command network. It looked like a vast spider web stretched across the galaxy, with thousands of nodes connected by streams of quantum data. Every piece of information flows through their central command hub. It's located on something they call Dominion Prime, near the galaxy's core. If we could get to that hub, if we could introduce even a small error into their network, they'd lose coordination, Elena finished. Their greatest strength becomes their greatest weakness. Exactly. But there's a problem. Dominion Prime is the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. It's surrounded by fleets that could destroy entire solar systems. Getting close enough to hack their network would be suicide. Elena was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Around her, the bridge crew waited. Outside their asteroid hiding place, Colasari patrol ships hunted for any sign of human presence. What if we didn't try to destroy their network? Elena finally asked, "What if we just confused it?" Marcus frowned. "I don't understand. You said they depend on perfect coordination. Every order has to be precise, every response instant. What if we introduced something they've never encountered before? What if we taught their network to doubt?" The idea was so simple that it took Marcus a moment to grasp it. When he did, his eyes widened with excitement. Doubt, uncertainty, small. Delays that create confusion. Captain, that's brilliant. I could write a program that introduces tiny errors into their communication stream. Not enough to shut down the network, but enough to make their commanders question what they're hearing. Could it work? In theory, yes. The Kolosari system assumes perfect information flow. It's not designed to handle uncertainty. Even small disruptions could cascade through their entire command structure. Elena looked around at her crew. These people had trusted her to keep them alive for 6 months. Now she was asking them to trust her with something much more dangerous. How long would it take to write this program? Give me 2 weeks, Marcus said. But Captain, there's still the problem of getting to Dominion Prime. Even if we had the virus ready, we'd never get close enough to upload it. Elena smiled for the first time in months. Marcus, you're thinking like someone who builds big ships and fights fair battles. We're not going to fight our way to Dominion Prime. We're going to sneak in. Sneak into the most heavily defended location in the galaxy? Why not? We've been sneaking past their patrols for months. We're small, we're quiet, and most importantly, we're beneath their notice. The Kolosari think in terms of massive fleets and overwhelming force. They won't be watching for one little mining ship. Sarah shook her head. Elena, this is insane. Even if we could get past their defenses, we'd be going into the heart of their empire with no backup, no support, and no way to escape. Sarah's right, added Torres. This is a one-way mission. Elena nodded. Yes, it is. Which is why I'm not ordering anyone to go. I'm asking for volunteers. She looked around the bridge, meeting each person's eyes. We can keep running. We can. Hide in asteroids and dead systems for years, maybe decades. Eventually, the Kolosari will find us, or we'll run out of supplies. Or we can take one shot at bringing down their empire. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then Marcus stepped forward. I volunteer, Captain. Someone needs to upload the virus, and I'm the only one who understands their systems well enough to do it. Count me in, Sarah said. Someone has to keep you two out of trouble. One by one, the rest of the bridge crew volunteered. Elena felt a mix of pride and terror. These people were willing to follow her into the most dangerous mission in human history. All right then, she said. Marcus, start working on that virus. Sarah, begin plotting a course to the galactic core. Everyone else, prepare the ship for the longest sneak in human history. As her crew scattered to their duties, Elena remained on the bridge, staring at the holographic display of the Kolosari network. Somewhere at its center was Dominion Prime, the beating heart of an empire that ruled the galaxy. Soon, one small human ship would try to stop that heart from beating. 2 weeks later, the Defiance hung in space near a graveyard of dead worlds. The remains of the Photonic Confederacy drifted around them like cosmic ghosts. Broken ships and shattered stations told the story of the Kolosari conquest. It's perfect, Dr. Marcus Chan said as he studied the debris field on his scanner. All this wreckage will hide our approach. The Kolosari sensors will have trouble picking us out from all the metal floating around. Elena nodded, but her attention was focused on the data streaming across her screen. Intelligence gathered from months of intercepted communications painted a picture of their target that made her stomach twist with worry. Dominion Prime was not just a space station. It was a constructed moon, a sphere of metal and crystal nearly 800 kilometers across. The Kolosari had built it at the exact center of the galaxy, where gravitational forces from billions of stars created a natural fortress. Any ship trying to approach had to navigate through fields of deadly radiation and twisted space-time. The defenses are incredible, reported Lieutenant Torres from his position at the tactical station. I count over 50,000 ships in patrol. Formations around Dominion Prime. Some of them are larger than our entire home fleet used to be. Elena studied the tactical display. Each red dot represented a Kolosari warship. There were so many that they looked like a red cloud surrounding their target. What about the automated defenses? Energy barriers that could stop a comet. Gravity weapons that can crush a battleship into the size of a marble. And that's just what we can detect from here. Sarah-chan joined her sister at the command station. Elena, this is impossible. We'd need a miracle just to get within 1,000 kilometers of that place. Maybe, Elena said, or maybe we just need to think smaller. She called up a new display showing the Defiance's specifications. The old mining ship had been designed to work in dangerous environments. Her hull could withstand asteroid impacts and radiation storms. Her small size let her maneuver through tight spaces where larger ships would be destroyed. Marcus, how close? Do we need to get to upload your virus? The young engineer consulted his notes. I need direct access to their quantum communication hub. Based on the intelligence we've gathered, that's located in the center of Dominion Prime. I'd need to physically connect to their network. Physical access, Elena repeated. Not remote hacking. Their security is too good for remote access. The virus has to be uploaded directly into their core systems. Elena was quiet for a moment, thinking. Around her, the bridge crew waited nervously. They all knew that their captain was planning something desperate. All right, Elena finally said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pretend to be space junk. Torres blinked. Captain, think about it. Dominion Prime has been here for months. The Kolosari have been hauling resources from across the galaxy to build and supply it. Some of that cargo is bound to be automated, unmarked, boring stuff that nobody pays attention to. Marcus caught on first. You want to disguise the Defiance as a supply shipment. Exactly. We strip off everything that makes us look like a human ship. We weld on some scrap metal to change our profile. We reprogram our transponder to broadcast Kolosari identification codes. And then we just fly right up to their front door, Sarah said, understanding dawning in her voice. Why not? We're a small cargo hauler delivering mining equipment. Nothing interesting, nothing threatening. Just another boring supply run that happens every day. Lieutenant Torres looked skeptical. Captain, what if they scan us? Our hull composition is completely different from Kolosari ships. Our engine signatures don't match their technology. That's why we're using the debris field, Elena explained. We're going to collect pieces of genuine Kolosari ships and bolt them onto our hull. By the time we're finished, we'll look like a Frankenstein monster of salvaged parts. Exactly the kind of ship you'd expect to see doing supply runs in a war zone. The plan was audacious, but it was also simple enough that it might work. The Kolosari had conquered so many civilizations that their empire was full of mixed technology. Ships built from a dozen different species parts were common in their supply lines. How do we get past the perimeter patrols? Sarah asked. Elena smiled grimly. We don't try to sneak past them. We join them. She brought up a display showing Kolosari patrol routes around Dominion Prime. The patterns were complex but predictable. Supply ships followed specific corridors to avoid interfering with military operations. We intercept a supply convoy at the edge of the debris field. Take out their escort quietly, then slip into the convoy's formation. By the time we reach Dominion Prime, we'll be just another cargo ship in a legitimate supply run. Marcus nodded slowly. It could work. But once we're inside Dominion Prime, how do we find the communication hub? That's where you come in, Elena said. You've been studying their technology for months. Can you build us a scanner that can detect their quantum communication equipment? I think so. Give me a few days to modify our sensors. You've got them. Sarah, Start working with Torres on intercept courses for supply convoys. I want options for at least 3 different convoys over the next week." As her crew scattered to prepare for the mission, Elena remained on the bridge, staring at the image of Dominion Prime on her screen. The massive construct hung in space like a mechanical planet, surrounded by fleets that could conquer galaxies. In 6 hours, she would address the entire crew. 847 people who had trusted her to keep them alive. Now she was asking them to follow her into the heart of the enemy empire on a mission that would almost certainly end in their deaths. She thought about the message she would record before they left. The final transmission from free humanity to the rest of the galaxy. "What did you say when your species was about to make its last stand, Captain?" Torres called from his station. "I've identified a supply convoy that will work for our intercept. 12 cargo ships with a light escort, carrying processed metals to Dominion Prime. When do they arrive in our sector?" 4 days from now." Elena nodded. "Perfect. That gives us time to finish our preparations." She walked to the observation deck, a small chamber near the front of the ship where miners used to watch for valuable asteroids. Now it showed her the graveyard of the Photonic Confederacy, thousands of broken ships drifting silently in the void. 6 months ago, she had been a mining ship captain, worried about quotas and equipment maintenance. Now she was planning the most desperate military operation in human history. Sometimes she wondered if she was going insane, but then she thought about Earth, about the colonies that had been abandoned when humanity went into hiding, about the billions of people who might still be alive somewhere, waiting for rescue that would never come unless someone took action. "We're really going to do this," she said to herself. Behind her, the bridge hummed with activity as her crew prepared for the impossible. In 4 days, they would begin their approach to Dominion Prime. In a week, they would either be heroes or dead. Elena preferred not to think about which outcome was more likely. Defiance continued its silent drift through the debris field. Just another piece of space junk in a galaxy full of broken dreams. But inside its armored hull, 847 humans were preparing to remind the universe that sometimes the smallest creatures cast the longest shadows. Marcus Chun worked frantically in the engineering section, building scanners that could detect quantum communication arrays. Sarah Chun coordinated with the ship's pilots, planning approach vectors that would keep them hidden until the last possible moment. Torres monitored Colasari communications, looking for any change in their security protocols. And in her quarters, Elena Vasquez sat at her desk and began writing humanity's final message to the stars, just in case they didn't make it back. Outside her window, Dominion Prime waited like a spider in its web, unaware that something very small and very determined was coming to visit. The Colasari supply convoy moved through space like a chain of metal beads. 12 cargo ships in perfect formation, with their escort fighters maintaining precise distances. Captain Elena Vasquez watched them through the Defiance's modified sensors, counting down the minutes until the intercept. "All stations, this is the captain," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We are go for Operation David Stone. All hands to battle stations." 847. People throughout the ship moved to their positions. In the past week, they had transformed the old mining vessel into something unrecognizable. Pieces of Colasari hull plating covered the original human design. Fake weapon ports and sensor arrays changed the ship's profile. The transponder now broadcast the identification codes of a cargo hauler called the Metal Harvester. "Target convoy is 2 minutes out," reported Lieutenant Torres. "Escort consists of 4 light fighters. Cargo ships appear to be automated." Elena nodded. The plan depended on those ships being automated. It was much easier to fool computer systems than living Colasari warriors. "Sarah, are the jamming devices ready?" "Standing by, Captain." We can cut their communications for approximately 30 seconds before they break through our signal. 30 seconds. That was all the time they had to disable the escort and slip into the convoy formation. Elena felt sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool air on the bridge. Marcus, is the virus ready for upload? Ready and waiting, Captain. The program is loaded into a portable storage device. Once I can access their quantum communication hub, I can install it in under 5 minutes. 5 minutes to save humanity. Elena almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Contact in 60 seconds. Torres announced. The convoy appeared on their main viewer, growing larger as it approached. The cargo ships were massive, each one carrying tons of refined metal to feed the construction projects around Dominion Prime. The escort fighters moved in lazy patterns around them, clearly bored with routine patrol duty. Execute jamming now. The space around the convoy suddenly filled with electronic noise. The escort fighters immediately broke formation, searching for the source of the interference. But they were looking for enemy warships, not a single modified cargo hauler hiding among the convoy's own ships. The Defiance moved like a striking snake. Plasma beams designed for mining asteroids reached out and touched the escort fighters. The weapons were not powerful enough to destroy the alien ships, but they were precise enough to disable their engines and communications. 28 seconds after the jamming began, the Defiance slipped into the convoy formation. The automated cargo ships, their simple computer brains confused by the electronic interference, accepted the newcomer as just another delayed arrival. Jamming terminated, Sarah reported. We're now broadcasting as the Metal Harvester, scheduled for delivery to Dominion Prime Construction Dock 7. Elena let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. First phase complete. Torres. Any signs that we've been detected? Negative, Captain. The disabled escort fighters are reporting equipment failures. Kolosari Command is dispatching repair ships to assist them. Perfect. The Giants were so confident in their own superiority that they couldn't imagine an attack by something as small as a single cargo ship. The escort's failure was just another mechanical problem to be solved. For the next 6 hours, the Defiance rode with the convoy toward the galactic core. Elena spent the time studying intelligence reports about Dominion Prime's internal structure. The massive station was divided into hundreds of sections, each one larger than most space stations. Finding the communication hub would be like looking for a specific room in a city-sized building. Captain, Marcus called from his engineering station. I'm picking up quantum communication signals from Dominion Prime. The closer we get, the stronger they become. I should be able to track them to their source once we're inside. How long do you estimate for the search? If we're lucky, maybe an hour. If the hub is heavily shielded or hidden, it could take much longer. Elena hoped they would be lucky. Once they were inside Dominion Prime, every minute would increase their chances of discovery. The convoy reached the outer perimeter of the Kolosari defenses. Energy barriers designed to stop enemy fleets parted like curtains to let the supply ships through. Guard stations the size of moons scanned each vessel, but the Defiance's false identification held up under scrutiny. Welcome to Dominion Prime. Traffic control, came a deep voice over the communication channel. Metal Harvester, you are cleared for docking at Construction Dock 7. Follow the automated guidance beacons. Acknowledged control, Elena replied, modulating her voice to sound bored and routine. Metal Harvester following beacons to Dock 7. Dominion Prime grew larger on their view screen until it filled their entire field of vision. The constructed moon was a masterpiece of engineering, its surface covered with docking bays, weapons, emplacements, and communication arrays. Cities of crystal and metal rose from its surface like geometric mountains. Defiance followed the guidance beacons toward their assigned docking bay. Around them, hundreds of other ships moved through the station's traffic patterns. The sheer scale of the place was overwhelming. Elena tried not to think about how many Commissary warriors were stationed here. Docking in 30 seconds, Sarah announced. All hands prepare for station gravity. The ship settled into its assigned berth with a soft thump. Through the viewports, Elena could see the vast interior of the docking bay. Cargo handling robots moved between the ships, unloading supplies for the station. Commissary overseers stood on elevated platforms, watching the operations with bored efficiency. Marcus, are you reading the communication signals? Yes, Captain. The source is stronger now. I'm getting a directional fix on the quantum hub. It's located approximately 15 kilometers from here, deep in the station's core. 15 kilometers through hostile territory. Elena activated her personal communicator and switched to a private channel. All team leaders, this is the captain. We are go for Phase 2. Alpha team will secure the docking bay. Beta team will escort Dr. Chun to the communication hub. Gamma team will prepare the ship for emergency departure. The plan was simple because it had to be. Overcomplicated operations failed when things went wrong, and things always went wrong. Elena's team would move fast, plant the virus, and get out before the Commissary realized what had happened. Captain, Torres called quietly. Station security is requesting our cargo manifest for inspection. Elena felt her heart skip a beat. This was the most dangerous moment of the entire operation. If the Commissary discovered that their cargo bays were full of humans instead of mining equipment, the mission would end before it began. Send them the false manifest we prepared, she ordered, and activate the holographic projectors in Cargo Bay 3. The holographic projectors had been Marcus's idea. Instead of trying to fill their cargo bays with actual mining equipment, they had installed devices that created realistic three-dimensional images. To any casual inspection, the bays would appear to be full of metal processing machinery. A Commissary inspector entered the ship 10 minutes later. He was enormous, even by the standards of his species, standing nearly 18 feet tall in his armored environmental suit. His glowing eyes swept the cargo bay, noting the stacks of equipment and raw materials. Standard delivery, he rumbled in a voice like grinding stone. Everything appears to be in order. Elena managed to keep her expression neutral as the giant walked past her hiding place just meters away. If he had bothered to scan more carefully, or if he had touched any of the holographic equipment, the deception would have been discovered instantly. But the Commissary were too confident, too used to absolute obedience from their subjects. The idea that someone might dare to infiltrate Dominion Prime never occurred to them. Inspection complete, the overseer announced as he left the ship. You are cleared to begin unloading operations. As soon as he was gone, Elena activated the mission clock. They had perhaps 2 hours before someone noticed that the metal harvester wasn't actually unloading any cargo. After that, their cover would be blown. Beta team, move out, she ordered Dr. Marcus. Chun led a small group of technicians out of the ship and into the maze of corridors that honeycombed Dominion Prime. They carried scanning equipment disguised as maintenance tools and wore stolen Commissary work uniforms that hid their human features. Elena followed their progress on her portable communicator, watching as Marcus tracked the quantum signals deeper into the station. The communication hub was located in the most heavily protected section of Dominion Prime, surrounded by security checkpoints and automated defenses. Captain, Marcus whispered over the comm channel, I found it. The quantum communication hub is behind a massive security door, but I think I can bypass the locks. Give me 10 minutes. Elena checked her mission timer. They had been on the station for 47 minutes. Time was running out. Alpha team, report, she called. Docking bay secure, Captain. No signs of suspicion yet. Gamma team? Engines warm and ready for emergency departure. Elena watched the minutes tick by on her chronometer. Somewhere in the depths of Dominion Prime, Dr. Marcus Chun was attempting to hack into the most sophisticated communication system in the galaxy. 8. Dr. Marcus Chun's hands trembled as he connected his portable device to the Kolosari quantum communication hub. The chamber around him hummed with power, filled with crystalline arrays that pulsed with alien energy. This single room controlled communications for an empire that spanned the galaxy. "Almost there, Captain," he whispered into his communicator. "The upload is beginning now." Elena Vasquez checked her mission timer again. They had been on Dominion Prime for 1 hour and 23 minutes. How much longer before someone noticed that the metal harvester wasn't actually unloading any cargo? Marcus, how much longer? 3 minutes for the initial upload. But Captain, the virus needs time to spread through their network. It won't activate immediately. Elena felt her stomach twist. How long before it takes effect? The program is designed to work slowly. It will introduce tiny errors gradually, so the Kolosari won't notice the changes at first. Full effect could take days or even weeks. Days or weeks. Elena realized with growing horror that they might not live to see if their mission succeeded. The virus would work its way through the Kolosari command structure long after the Defiance. And her crew were dead. "Upload complete," Marcus announced. "The virus is in their system." "All teams, prepare for emergency departure," Elena ordered. "We need to leave now." But as Marcus and his team tried to withdraw from the communication hub, alarms began sounding throughout Dominion Prime. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and automated voices spoke in the Kolosari language. "Captain, we have a problem." Lieutenant Torres reported from the ship. "Station security just discovered that our cargo bays are empty. They're sending guards to investigate." Elena felt her heart sink. Their cover was blown, but the mission was complete. The virus was in the Kolosari network, beginning its slow work of introducing doubt and confusion into their perfect system. All teams return to the ship immediately. Prepare for combat departure. The next few minutes were chaos. Marcus and his team ran through the corridors of Dominion Prime, pursued by Kolosari security forces. The giants were fast, despite their size, and their weapons could punch holes through solid metal. Elena watched on her scanner as her people fought a running battle through the station's maze-like interior. 2 of her team members fell to alien energy weapons. 3 more were wounded, but managed to keep moving. Approaching the docking bay, Marcus reported breathlessly. Heavy resistance at the entrance. "Alpha team, clear the path," Elena ordered. Her security team, positioned around the docking bay, opened fire on the Kolosari guards with everything they had. Mining lasers and improvised weapons lit up the vast chamber. The aliens returned. Fire with devastating precision, but the humans had the advantage of cover and surprise. "All teams aboard," Sarah-chan announced as the last of the boarding party reached the ship. "Closing airlocks now." "Take us out," Elena commanded the Defiance. Lifted off from its docking cradle and accelerated toward the bay entrance. Behind them, Kolosari fighters were launching in pursuit. Ahead, the bay doors were beginning to close. "We're not going to make it," Torres warned as he calculated their approach speed. "Yes, we are," Elena said grimly. She activated the ships. Mining charges, explosive devices normally used to crack asteroids. Clear the path. The charges detonated against the closing bay doors, blowing them apart in a shower of metal and energy. The Defiance shot through the gap with seconds to spare, emerging into the space around Dominion Prime. Immediately, every weapon on the massive station turned toward them. Energy beams powerful enough to destroy battleships reached out for the tiny human ship. Alana threw the Defiance into a desperate evasive pattern, using every trick she had learned in years of asteroid mining. "Shields at 60%, Torres reported as an energy beam clipped their port side. "We can't take much more of this." "We don't need to," Elena replied. "Just get us to the debris field." The Defiance raced away from Dominion Prime, pursued by waves of Kolosari fighters. The alien ships were faster and more heavily armed, but Elena knew these ships better than anyone. She threaded the Defiance through radiation storms and gravitational anomalies that would tear apart larger vessels. 20 minutes later, they reached the relative safety of the outer debris field. The Kolosari pursuit broke off, unwilling to risk their expensive ships in the dangerous environment. "We made it," Sarah breathed, hardly believing their survival. But Elena was thinking about something else. "Marcus, how long did you say before the virus takes full effect?" "Could be weeks, Captain." "Why?" Elena activated the ship's long-range scanners, pointing them back toward Dominion Prime. "Because I think it's working faster than you expected." The scanner display showed the massive Kolosari fleets around their central command station. But something was wrong with their formations. Ships that should have been in perfect alignment were drifting out of position. Communication signals that should have been precise and coordinated were becoming erratic. "Captain," Torres called from his station, "I'm intercepting Kolosari military communications. They're reporting equipment malfunctions across their entire fleet." Elena smiled grimly. The virus was already spreading through their network, introducing tiny delays and inconsistencies that the rigid Kolosari command structure couldn't handle. Orders were arriving nanoseconds late. Responses were slightly out of sync. The perfect machine was developing a stutter. Over the following days, the Defiance remained hidden in the debris field, monitoring Kolosari communications. What they heard was the sound of an empire tearing itself apart. "Fleet Commander Vaskmer reports conflicting orders from Sector Command," one transmission said. "Overlord Nethkol demands to know why his orders were countermanded," said another. "All vessels in Quadrant 7 report communication failures, requesting clarification of current objectives." The virus worked exactly as Marcus had designed it. The Kolosari command network, which had been their greatest strength, became their fatal weakness. When orders arrived even microseconds late, subordinates began to question whether they were receiving the correct instructions. When responses were delayed, commanders wondered if their authority was being challenged. Within 2 weeks, the mighty Kolosari fleets were paralyzed by doubt. Ship captains refused to follow orders they weren't certain about. Overlords accused each other of treason and incompetence. The empire that had conquered the galaxy began fighting a civil war against itself. "Captain," Torres announced one morning, "I'm receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The Kolosari are withdrawing from occupied systems. Their fleet commanders are recalling ships to deal with internal conflicts." Elena felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she was carrying. "Any word from human colonies?" "Yes, Captain. I'm picking up broadcasts from Earth, Mars, and a dozen other systems. The colonies are emerging from hiding. Humanity survived." 3 months after the mission to Dominion Prime, the Kolosari Empire had collapsed completely. Their once mighty fleets were scattered across the galaxy, each faction convinced that the others were traitors and enemies. The giants who had seemed invincible were brought down not by superior weapons or larger armies, but by the simple introduction of doubt into their perfect system. Elena stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as human ships emerged from hiding throughout the galaxy. Her own ship had become a symbol of resistance, proof that even the smallest and weakest could stand against tyranny. "Captain," Sarah said as she joined Elena at the observation deck, "Command is requesting that we return to Earth. They want to debrief us on the mission." Elena nodded, but her attention was focused on something else. On her scanner, she could see new ships launching from human colonies. Exploration vessels, cargo haulers, even a few warships. Humanity was venturing into space again, no longer afraid of the giants who had once ruled the galaxy. Set course. For Earth, she ordered, but take the long way home. I want to see what's left of the galaxy we helped save. The Defiance turned away from the debris field and headed toward the inner systems. Behind them, the wreckage of Dominion Prime drifted silently in space, a monument to the truth that sometimes the smallest stone, thrown at exactly the right moment, could bring down the mightiest giant dot as they traveled through space that was. Once again free, Elena thought about the message she had never sent. The final transmission from humanity that was supposed to be broadcast if their mission failed. Instead, she decided to record a different message. A message of hope for all the small species in the galaxy who thought they were powerless against the giants. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earthship Defiance, she began. To all free beings in the galaxy, remember that size is not everything. Sometimes the smallest voice can shout the loudest. Sometimes the weakest hand can strike the hardest blow. And sometimes one small ship can bring an entire empire to its knees. The transmission spread across the galaxy, carried by the same quantum networks that had once served the Kolosari Empire. It was picked up by the survivors of conquered civilizations, by hidden rebels, and by anyone who had ever felt small and powerless. And in the deep spaces between the stars, other small ships began too.